Hey everybody, this is Tracy here for another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here to recap Real Housewives of Atlanta Season 9, Episode 16, which was titled Maui Madness. So you guys know at the beginning of the season when we were talking about Kenya and the Matt drama, I expressed my feelings about domestic violence and how I don't appreciate Bravo playing with this sensitive topic. And last night was another example. So I'm just going to talk about the different things that happened on the show last night. So it's not going to be my normal recap of the show where I give you guys a play-by-play of everything that happened, as the show went along. So I want to start out talking about this whole Bob and Sheree issue, because it was several key things really troubled me about this scene. And I'm going to start off with the top about Bob and the laughing. A lot of people on social media were getting angry at Bob because he was laughing, and they were saying that he wasn't taking things seriously. So I just want to put out there to you guys that people who laugh in very uncomfortable situations, that is something that's real, and they're actually in the medical community trying to come up with a technical name for what this is, but basically it is an involuntary reaction to being in a stressful situation, and people do it to calm themselves down. And it's no different than somebody who may start blinking uncontrollably when they're nervous. If some people rub the back of their neck, some people start fiddling with their face, pulling on their earring. All those are involuntary actions to try and calm you down when you're in a stressful situation. And so one name for that is involuntary emotional expression disorder. And another name is called hypermania. But basically the system tries to kill off the stress that the person is under in that situation or at that time by the laughter coming out. And so they really don't have control over it. And I don't think that Bob was making light of the conversation and what was going on with him and Sheree in that moment. And I did a little research after the show because I am familiar with this condition, because I've seen it played out in other, I can't remember if it was television shows or what initially made me look this up several years ago to see what it was all about, but it is real. But one thing I found out in researching it for this recap is that now they're saying that it can also be caused by brain trauma. So we know that Bob is a retired football player, so it could very well be that he's had some type of brain trauma that is causing this reaction to when he's in stressful situations. So that was number one. So number two, I don't know if it was coincidence or Bravo set it up this way, but if you notice, we had Sheree, Kenya, and Phaedra in that car together, and then we had Bob. So it was like they had the black man and then three black women who all, according to the show, have experienced some form of domestic violence situation. So I kind of was feeling some kind of way about that because, we had Phaedra with the whole Apollo thing when he was getting ready to go to jail. So that was on the show. We don't know if it was real or made up. Then we have Kenya and this Matt foolishness, which I really believe is made up. And now we have Sheree, who was married to Bob, who's now claiming that Bob abused her during the marriage. But part of your storyline on this show has always been that Bob was a cheater. I don't recall Sheree ever saying that Bob was abusive to her and that, he was choking her and beating her and all this stuff. But now you're on this show where you're supposedly rekindling your relationship, and we're like, oh, it's so cute that Sheree and Bob are getting back together. And then bam, here we go. And now you want to talk about Bob was choking your ass. So I'm just like, I don't know what to believe. And I don't like how Bravo is setting this up. I really don't. And I'm kind of bothered that the women are playing into the whole thing. And if their goal is to bring awareness to domestic violence, I just need them to do it in a different way, because this show is really not a show that I want to be looking at for serious social issues, to be educating me on social issues because of this kind of foolishness that happened last night. So moving on to the rest of the madness. The following day, after Kandi completely showed her behind at the dinner, She gets up the next day and she's still talking about Porsha. So her and Todd talk, and she decides that she doesn't want Porsha to be a part of the day's activities. So she calls Phaedra and tells Phaedra that she has to be the one to call Porsha and disinvite her from what they were going to do for that day. And they were going to go out speedboating or something Kandi had going on. Meanwhile, Porsha and Todd, they chilling in their suite. And Todd is just like tripping over what took place the night before. And he's asking Porsha like, okay, well, what's going to happen today? But then Porsha, she tells Todd that this is the madness that we call our friendship. And basically, after stuff like that happens, a few hours later, everybody is over with. So I'm sure we're just going to go out and do whatever Kandi had planned for us today, and everything is going to be okay. But then Phaedra shows up, and I don't know what the hell Phaedra had on. She said it was a bathing suit for when she was 16 years old and going to Freaknik in Atlanta. And I was just like, Phaedra, I'm glad you had that wrap on, because that was not cute at all. I mean, the back of the bathing suit was going all up her butt. She digging it all out. Porsha tried to help her dig it out. But anyway, Phaedra lets Porsha know that she has been uninvited from the outing for the day. And so Porsha didn't really seem like she cared. She was just totally unbothered, and she said, that's fine. Me and Todd can spend a really nice day together. And it seemed like her and Todd had a lot of fun, rekindling their relationship, because, they had been having some issues, prior to the trip. So I think it was a good look that they were able to spend time together, and we saw how couples really act. And, that bathing suit that Porsha had on, it was kind of cutting up her butt too. And at that part where Todd had her up on his shoulders, and I was just like, okay, Porsha, that looked like you got a thong on, because the bathing suit just don't went all up. And Porsha got a big old behind. Like, is that her real behind, or is that one of them butt injection behinds? I just know I don't want no behind that big. I'm kind of happy with the butt that I have. So back to this trip where they were going to the speed boating. So, as I told you, it was Phaedra, Kenya, Sheree, and Bob in one car. And of course, all the editing, we don't know what the conversation actually was that started the whole Sheree and Bob thing. But one thing I was thinking about, who in their right mind, even if you are involved in a domestic violence situation, who's going to be in a car with people that truly aren't your friends, and then you're going to start having this conversation like it's just, how's the weather, or what did you do yesterday? So that in and of itself was unreal, that Sheree and Bob would have been having such a serious conversation in front of Phaedra and Kenya, especially since a few episodes ago, Kenya was kind of like making light of Sheree having been in a domestic violence situation where she claimed that some man Sheree used to date was whooping her behind. And so Bob, when they were talking, he asked her several times if he had ever put his hands on her. And then Sheree, I don't think she ever verbalized, yes, you have beat my behind before. But she was sort of like shaking her head and looking at him like, you did before. And once again, just an awkward situation that you wouldn't even been having this conversation in front of the people that you were having it in front of. So when Bob made the comment about, obviously I didn't choke you hard enough, totally inappropriate, totally uncalled for, and just something that I don't think he would have said in front of other people if it wasn't scripted. But if it did happen, Bob, you were dead wrong. You were dead wrong for it. But then it goes back to, why in the world, Sheree, are you bouncing around there pretending like you and Bob are trying to work it out? Did you totally forget about the domestic violence? Did you think he had changed? How serious was the domestic violence? Do we have some proof that this, happened back in the day? Like, I just think that this is too serious of a topic for you to be putting it out there on Real Housewives of Atlanta just to have a storyline. In the other car, we had Kandi and Todd and Peter and Cynthia. And for Kandi to not have wanted Porsha to come along because of all the drama, she can't keep Porsha's name out of her mouth. So, once again, they're talking about Porsha. And Cynthia is truly working my nerves with the Porsha is a liar, Porsha is a liar. She lies every time she opens her mouth. She's always lying. Like, Were you there to witness any of this that you could just proclaim without a doubt that Porsha is lying in this situation? Like, because, you know, as my grandmother used to say, you know, there's your story, there's their story, and then somewhere in the middle of all this is the truth. And the way Kandi's Todd has kind of been like laying low and not being angry and not saying, you know, Porsha, you lying and all this stuff, kind of letting Kandi have it, lets me know that something happened between the three of them. And like Peter said, Todd, if you had the opportunity to smash Porsha and your wife together or smash Porsha by herself, I believe you would go for the opportunity. But hopefully Porsha wouldn't accept your offer, especially if it was outside of a threesome. Okay, and so this part right here, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I was kind of like tuning out on the show, and there was some really good tennis going on over in Indian Wells, California, and then Greenleaf was re-airing for season 1, because you know season 2 starts on Wednesday night. So I was flipping channels, and after the part where Cynthia, you know, realized that they were getting on a speedboat and not a yacht, and she was concerned about her dress getting wet, I turned the TV, and when I turned back to Bravo, they were actually meeting at the restaurant for dinner. So I don't know what happened on that boat trip, what was said, so I can't put it in this recap, but it really doesn't matter. Later that evening, everyone is getting together for dinner, minus Porsha and Todd. But Peter and Cynthia were running late. And then when they finally did show up, they had like that after sex glow thing going on. So I don't know what those two was up to. But Cynthia, you know, she swears that she had to stop and go shopping to get her something to wear because her sundress had gotten wet on the boat. So the men end up leaving the table after Phaedra says that she wants to talk to the ladies about doing a late night or nightcap restoration service or something. So Kenya is immediately negative, and you know, I'm really loving how Phaedra is standing up to Kenya on this season, because I think everybody is pretty much over Kenya and her crap, including her Stan fans. I think they're ready for her to get off this show with her just nothing positive about her. And even when they were on the camping trip, when everybody was trying to be upbeat and positive, she never could just like, it was like she was trying to be positive in some of the situations, but she never could just articulate the right positive words to make it seem like she was on board with everybody. And last night was no different in this episode. So the ladies agreed to meet with Porsha, included, you know, to work on their differences. And I don't know why, since none of them seem, you know, in the mindset to be open and honest and, you know, talk things out in a civil manner, which means that they were already setting Phaedra up for failure. In case they didn't know, you know, the main part of restoration is to be restored to wholeness and a happier place, and it requires a willingness to surrender the things that are causing you to be bitter and bringing you down and filling you with negativity. But they seem to be content just holding on to the anger and everything that's keeping them apart. Porsha and Sheree, you know, they're the first ones to arrive, you know, along with Phaedra, and they're all in a good mood and they're laughing and talking and everything. So then Kandi arrives, and when she walked in that room, you could literally see and feel the air being sucked out of the atmosphere. So now that part was real, even though I think most of the show is fake. That part was really real, as she just sat down, and the look on her face, you know, the way she was rolling her eyes and carrying on. You know, if I was Phaedra, I just would be like, girl, go back to your room and let's call it a night. But then Cynthia and Kenya, you know, they eventually showed up, and we were about to get this thing going, you know, and even though Cynthia kept saying, you know, I'm all about positivity and I'm all about bringing the love and everything, she was still bringing that negative energy, because in her confessional, she didn't believe that it was going to work and that Phaedra was wasting her time. So in a nutshell, Sheree confronted Kenya about the whole domestic violence comment from, you know, 4 or 5 episodes ago. Porsha told Kandi, you know, at the end of the day, she came with her nonsense because Kandi had came with nonsense. And so now they were both even. And when Kandi got into the confessional, she said that Porsha finally admitted to lying. So like I said, I was flipping channels. So maybe I missed the part where Porsha said that she was telling a lie, because not one time did I hear Porsha say, okay, I admit it, I was lying on you, girl. I was just trying to get back at you. Porsha said, I came for you because you came for me, and let's squash it. And pretty much that's what happened. They squashed it. But in Kandi's mind, Porsha admitted to lying, and then everybody on social media was like, oh my God, Porsha, you took us through all this because you were lying. And unless something happened when I was flipping them channels, Porsha did not admit to lying. So, Andy, when y'all have that reunion, I'm going to need you to have Porsha answer yes or no as to whether or not she was lying about the whole comment that somebody allegedly said to her. But then I think the final part of the restoration was Porsha, for some reason, I guess she felt she was out of the doghouse and things were okay with her and Kandi. But then she tells Kandi that she owes Phaedra an apology for putting it out there that Phaedra had cheated on Apollo. And I was like, really, Porsha, that's what we gonna do? We gonna start a whole nother war? But, you know, Kandi was like, girl, please. But then I think in the end, her and Phaedra, you know, did come to some type of common ground. But Phaedra, the way you was hemming and hawing and stuttering, girl, I believe that you may have been cheating on Apollo. So I don't know. But anyway, the show ended with Bob going to the jewelry store to try and make things better with Sheree. But when Sheree showed up, you know, she was acting like she was still in her feelings, and then Bob started laughing, and then that just ticked her off. And let me say this, I used to date somebody that used to laugh all the time, and it used to drive me crazy. Well, not laugh all the time as in what's going on this show, but he used to play all the time. And people who play all the damn time are so exhausting. Because when you don't want to play anymore and they're still trying to play, and you're just getting agitated and annoyed, and the more agitated and annoyed you become, the more they want to play, and then things just get out of hand. And so Bob was trying to play and Sheree wasn't in the mood to play. So that whole let me buy her a piece of jewelry thing kind of went so far left that it wasn't even funny. But anyway, that was my third point about this whole domestic violence thing, is that it's very common that after a man or, you know, beats up his wife or his girlfriend, that he'll go and he'll buy her a gift, and then she takes him back, and that makes everything better. So I guess what Bravo was trying to do with the whole Bob at the jewelry store was like, okay, is to show like a cycle of abuse between him and Sheree. I just think that the whole scene was in bad taste, just like Matt. I can't believe that these men are allowing Bravo to, you know, use them like this and put them on this show and have people thinking that they are abusers. And especially since the men on the show reportedly don't get paid for being on the show. So even if, you know, like Matt, you know, he was on the show. So I could see that part, you know, if that was true between him and Kenya playing out. But I think that Sheree had total control over this, and that even if she wanted to bring it up on the show, Bob, why would you come on the show and allow them to depict you this way? I just don't get it. What I think was so funny about this entire episode, though, was the whole idea of going to Hawaii was Todd's idea. You know, there you get away for a couple of days of rest and relaxation. But then Kandi wanted to invite everybody else, and she let Phaedra invite Porsha. But at the end of the day, unless something happens on next week's episode, the only two people that really enjoyed themselves was Porsha and her man Todd. And then, of course, you know, if Cynthia and Peter, you know, got it together, I'm sure they had a good time. But from the looks of things, Porsha had a good time, and she was definitely looking beautiful and glowing. So kudos for you, Porsha, and hopefully you and your man Todd can work things out. But anyway, that's it for me. You know, what do you guys think? Leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I will check with you guys next time. Bye-bye.